They said he was quiet. Too quiet. When Adam Carter first stepped off that troop train in Europe, most men barely noticed him. Just another face under a steel helmet, another body to fill the front lines. But if you looked closely, there was something different in his eyes. A stillness. Like someone who'd already buried parts of himself long before the war began. Adam was born on the red soil of Alabama, son of sharecroppers who worked land they'd never own. His childhood was a mix of long days, hard hands, and nights filled with stories whispered by his grandmother about spirits that watched over the restless and the wronged. She used to tell him, "The earth remembers, Adam. Even when people forget." By 1944, the world was burning. The draft didn't care about color, but the army did. Black soldiers like Adam were given shovels, not rifles. They dug trenches, carried bodies, repaired roads, their courage hidden behind labor that history rarely mentions. But Adam didn't complain. He watched, listened, and waited. His commanding officer, Sergeant Hayes, once wrote in a letter, "Carter's the kind of man who looks at you and you forget your next sentence." There was no malice in him, just a silence that unsettled everyone around him. Then came February 3, 1945, the day that would erase him from the record books and turn him into a ghost. The mission was routine, at least on paper. A patrol through the Herkin Forest, a stretch of German woodland so thick, even the maps hesitated to show it. Their orders: locate enemy stragglers, secure a clearing, and wait for extraction. 10 men went in. None expected anything more than cold feet and bad rations. The snow that morning was colorless, not white, just empty, like the world had stopped choosing sides. Trees stood like soldiers themselves, frozen mid-march. As the unit pushed deeper, their boots sank without sound. Radios crackled once, then died. It was as if the forest had swallowed their frequency, or decided they didn't need to be heard. Hayes cursed under his breath. Torres made jokes about ghosts in the woods. Jackson hummed hymns he didn't believe in. And Adam just walked. Steady. Unbothered. Watching the fog curl between the trunks like smoke from a dying fire. That's when they found the first tracks. Not animal. Not human. Something heavier. Spaced wrong. Deep enough to make the earth groan. Torres laughed it off, said maybe it was German armor. But Adam knew better. The marks weren't leading through the forest, they were circling it. By dusk, they reached a clearing that didn't exist on any map. Perfectly round. No snow on the ground. Just black soil, still warm, as if something had recently been buried, or unearthed. Hayes ordered camp. No one argued. That night, Adam sat by the fire, quiet as ever. But in the flicker of flame, he saw shapes between the trees, not soldiers, not shadows. Something watching. Something remembering. He didn't tell the others. Some truths only make sense when it's too late to change them. The next morning, the forest was even quieter. Not a single bird. Not a single breath of wind. Just silence, thick enough to feel like weight. When they left that clearing, 9 men walked beside him. Only one would come back. And he wouldn't come back the same. The Herkin Forest wasn't supposed to exist. At least, not where the maps said it did. Soldiers who'd marched through Belgium swore they'd seen every hill, every creek, every burned-out village from Antwerp to Aachen, but none of them remembered this place. It wasn't just hidden. It was wrong. Like the land itself had folded, tucking this stretch of earth away where compasses forgot how to point north. Adam Carter noticed it first. The further they walked, the less sense the world made. Trees grew too close together, their roots twisted like veins in the soil. The fog clung low, thicker than smoke, refusing to lift even when the sun should have burned it off. And somewhere beneath the silence, there was a sound, faint, steady, like a heartbeat muffled under dirt. Hayes kept checking his map, spinning the compass, cursing under his breath. "It's the damn magnetic field," he muttered. "German tech, probably." But Torres, chewing the edge of a cigar, just shook his head. "Can't mess with the whole forest, Sarge. This place ain't right." By noon, the radio had gone completely dead. Static. Then nothing. Jackson tried to make a joke, something about ghosts stealing the signal, but no one laughed this time. They pressed on, boots sinking into soft, black mud. The air smelled strange, Not rot, not smoke, more like metal and rain and something else, something old. When they reached the next ridge, Adam stopped. He didn't say a word, just stared at the trees ahead. The others followed his gaze, and froze. Carved into the bark of a dead oak was a mark. A perfect circle with a single jagged line through its center. Too clean to be random. Too deliberate to be nature. Hayes barked at Torres to ignore it. Probably some Kraut unit symbol, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He turned to Adam, maybe expecting a reaction. But Adam only looked closer, fingers brushing the carving like he was trying to feel its memory. "It's not German," he murmured. That night, they set camp again, this time without fire. The fog didn't allow it. Every spark died as soon as it was born. The men ate cold rations and watched the trees. And somewhere out there, between the still trunks and the low mist, something watched them back. Hours passed. The forest breathed. The air pulsed. Then came a sound, faint but unmistakable, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not running. Just moving. Movement. Jackson hissed, rifle raised. The squad spun in every direction, guns shaking. Nothing. Only fog. Then, from the dark, voices. Low, distant, in German. But not shouting, whispering. 5 silhouettes emerged, hands raised. Prisoners. Hayes let out a nervous laugh. "Well, boys, looks like luck's finally on our side." But Adam didn't smile. He was staring at one of them, an older soldier, tall, calm, eyes cold and steady even in surrender. "Name?" Hayes demanded. The man hesitated, then said softly, "Otto." And just like that, the air seemed to tighten, like the forest had been waiting for that name. The fog shifted, circling them again. Adam felt the soil tremble under his boots, not from footsteps, not from wind. From memory. The kind that doesn't fade with time. They tied the German soldiers together at the wrists, 5 men in gray, eyes hollow, boots caked with mud. To Hayes, they were just prisoners. To Adam, they were something else. Because when he looked at them, especially the one named Otto, he didn't see soldiers. He saw witnesses. The campfire flickered weakly against the fog that refused to move. Torres sat cleaning his rifle, humming under his breath, trying to drown out the silence. Jackson whispered prayers. Hayes wrote in his logbook. And Adam. He watched Otto. The German hadn't begged, hadn't spoken much, hadn't even looked afraid. He just stared into the flames, his expression almost thoughtful. Finally, he said something. Low. Measured. "You feel it too, don't you?" Hayes looked up. "What's he saying?" Adam didn't answer. He didn't need to. Otto kept talking, his accent sharp, but his words clear. "This forest, it listens." No one laughed. Not this time. Torres threw a twig into the fire. "What's that supposed to mean?" Otto's eyes didn't move from Adam's. "It remembers." That word hit something deep inside Adam, like a string being plucked somewhere in his bones. He'd grown up hearing that word in a different context, his grandmother whispering it while pouring water over the graves of people who died with no names. The earth remembers. Now, a German prisoner was saying it in the middle of a forest that wasn't supposed to exist. Hayes barked out a laugh. "Fairy tales. You Krauts really drink your own ghost stories, huh?" Otto smiled faintly. "You think I lie? Ask your man." Every eye turned to Adam. He said nothing. Just stood, picked up his rifle, and walked a few steps into the fog. The sound of the forest was so heavy it felt like it had a heartbeat. Behind him, Otto's voice followed, almost like a chant. "There is a unit. Not SS, not army. They come at night. No insignia. No mercy. They kill their own if captured." Hayes snorted. "What, some German boogeymen?" But Otto didn't stop. His voice lowered, almost tender. "They come for blood owed. And they come for you." The fire hissed. Even Torres, the Joker, went silent. "What's that supposed to mean?" Hayes snapped. Otto looked at Adam again. "In a village weeks ago, we left one alive. A girl. She prayed for vengeance. She called for the forest to remember. His eyes darkened. And now it does. Adam's hand tightened around his rifle. His pulse roared in his ears. He didn't ask which village. Deep down, he already knew. That night, no one slept. Every time someone closed their eyes, the wind would shift, carrying whispers that didn't belong to any language they knew. The fog thickened, and the cold felt less like weather and more like presence. Around midnight, Torres leaned over and whispered to Adam, "He's full of it, right? Just trying to spook us." Adam didn't answer. He couldn't. Because far out in the mist, barely visible through the gray, he saw it, a shape standing between the trees. Still, tall, watching. And when Adam blinked, it was gone. The fire sputtered once, then died completely. No one spoke. Only Otto, whispering something under his breath in German. Later, Adam would remember just one word from that whisper, Zahlen. To pay. By dawn, the fog hadn't lifted. It just thickened, pale, heavy, and endless, like the forest didn't want them to leave. Hayes woke first, shaking frost from his helmet. He cursed under his breath when he noticed one of the bedrolls still warm, but empty. "Miller!" he shouted. No answer. At first, they thought he'd wandered off to relieve himself. But after an hour of searching, no prints, no sound, no trace, it became clear that Miller hadn't walked away. He'd been taken. Torres muttered something in Spanish, crossed himself twice. Hayes barked orders, his voice cracking. "He deserted. That's all. We move out in formation." But Adam knew Miller hadn't deserted. The man was too scared to run from his own shadow, let alone into this fog. As they packed, Otto smiled faintly, his wrists bound in rope. "For left," he whispered. Hayes spun on him. "Shut your mouth." Otto just kept smiling. "You can't shut the forest." The squad moved quickly, their boots muffled by the soft ground. Torres covered the rear. Jackson carried the radio, tapping the receiver every few minutes even though he knew it was dead. The German prisoners stumbled ahead, hands tied, heads down. Hours passed. The trees never changed. Same black bark, same tangled roots, same impossible silence. Even when they turned, it felt like they were walking in circles. Around midday, Jackson called out, "Hey, Hayes, compass ain't moving." Hayes snatched it from his hand. The needle spun slowly, then stopped, pointing straight up. That's when they heard it. A voice. Soft. Distant. Like someone calling from far away. "Miller!" Torres shouted. Silence. Then again, fainter this time. "Help!" It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing between the trees like the forest itself was mimicking a man's voice. They ran toward it, instinct, not reason, rifles raised, breath sharp in their throats. But when they reached the clearing, there was nothing. Just a single boot half buried in the mud. Hayes stared at it. "That's his," he said quietly. "That's Miller's." Otto laughed. "Low. Dry. 3. Torres lunged at him, grabbed him by the collar. "You think this is funny?" Otto didn't resist. "Not funny," he said softly. "Fair." That night, no one slept. They didn't dare light a fire. The air itself felt wrong, heavy with static, like the forest was holding its breath. Jackson took first watch. Torres second. Adam sat with his rifle across his knees, staring into the fog. Every time he blinked, he swore he saw movement. Not footsteps, not men, just shapes, gliding between the trees without sound. Then came the whisper. Not in his ear, in his mind. "You remember." He froze. Looked around. Nothing. But when he turned back toward the others, one more was gone. Hayes's bedroll lay open. His rifle untouched. His helmet resting on the dirt. No scream. No sound. Just absence. Jackson dropped the radio in panic. "Where the hell?" "He was right here." Adam didn't answer. He didn't even look surprised. He just looked at Otto. The German nodded once. "Two," he murmured. Torres backed away, eyes wide. "We're being hunted, man. This ain't normal. This ain't." A branch snapped in the dark. All three turned. But there was nothing there. Just fog, pulsing like it was alive. Adam raised his rifle, whispering through clenched teeth, "Stay close." Because he knew, deep down, this wasn't about enemies or orders anymore. The forest was choosing. And it wasn't done yet. By the third night, the forest had gone completely silent. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, the kind that makes your ears ring because even the wind refuses to breathe. 3 Americans left: Adam, Jackson, and Torres. 3 Germans still bound. And Otto, calm as a priest before confession. They camped without a fire. Even the matchsticks seemed afraid to burn. Jackson sat hunched over the dead radio, whispering, "Please, come on, just something," but all it gave back was static. Torres paced like a caged animal. "This is wrong, man. This is cursed." Adam didn't respond. He hadn't spoken since Hayes vanished. He just sat there, staring into the dark. That's when Otto spoke again, his voice cutting through the cold like a blade. "You still don't understand, do you?" Torres turned, rifle raised. "You shut your mouth." Otto ignored him. His eyes were fixed on Adam. "She remembers you. The girl. The one you left behind." Adam's breath caught. "What girl?" Torres asked, but Adam didn't answer. Otto's smile was small, tired. "You think she prayed to God?"
No.
"She prayed to the trees. And they listened." Torres cursed under his breath, aimed the rifle at Otto's head. "Enough." But before he could pull the trigger, the forest answered. A wind howled through the clearing. No, not wind. A voice. Thousands of whispers layered into one sound that crawled under their skin. The fire pit, long cold, suddenly flared to life in a burst of white light. Torres screamed. The flame died instantly. When Adam's vision cleared, Torres was gone. Not dragged. Not killed. Just gone. Jackson dropped to his knees, sobbing. "We're next. God, we're next." "Quiet," Adam said. His voice was calm again, almost detached. He turned to Otto. "What are they?" Otto's face was pale in the moonlight. "Not what?" "Who?" He gestured toward the fog. "They are memory made flesh. You killed them once when you watched and did nothing. Now they kill for you." Adam froze. "That village." Otto nodded slowly. "The one you didn't save." And suddenly it made sense. The symbol, the silence, the eyes in the trees. The forest didn't just remember death, it remembered inaction. By dawn, only Adam, Jackson, and the prisoners remained. They began to move again, deeper into the mist. Each step heavier than the last. Jackson was praying under his breath when something, a whisper, a movement, a chill, passed behind him. He turned, rifle trembling. "Who's there?" No answer. He took one step forward, then vanished, mid-breath. 1 second there. The next, gone. Adam didn't flinch. Not anymore. He just stood there, the last man standing. Otto tilted his head. "One left." Adam walked toward him slowly, knife glinting under the gray light. "You said she remembers. So tell me what she wants." Otto's lips curved into the faintest smile. 5 for 5. Adam looked down at the bound soldiers. 5 Germans. He knew what it meant. He knew it before he even moved. The forest didn't want escape. It wanted balance. He didn't remember the details, only the aftermath. The sound of his own breath. The warmth of blood on his hands. The fog rolling away like it had been waiting for its due. When Adam Carter stumbled out of the Herkin Forest 3 days later, his uniform was torn, his eyes hollow. The 5 prisoners were never found. And no one ever asked how he survived. Because deep down, every soldier knows, some debts can't be explained. They can only be paid. Long before Adam Carter ever set foot in the Herkin Forest, before his patrol vanished and the fog swallowed their names, there was a girl, a name barely recorded in a single forgotten report, Nain. 16 years old. Daughter of a farmer from a small Belgian village caught between retreating Germans and advancing Americans. Her life was simple, feeding chickens, helping her mother knead bread, singing to soldiers who passed through because it made them smile. She believed kindness could survive war. She believed people, even armed ones, could still be human. And then the wrong unit arrived. They weren't regular Wehrmacht, not even SS. They wore German uniforms, yes, but their insignias were blacked out, names scratched from dog tags. Unit K-7D-14. Experimental Psychological Warfare. Their orders were simple: erase everything. When they came, they didn't shout. They didn't fire warning shots. They moved through the village like surgeons through an open wound. By sundown, the houses were burning, the men were gone, and Nain was on her knees beside her father's body. One of the soldiers held her down while another carved something into her skin, a circle with a single slash through the center. The same mark Adam would see later, burned into the trees. No one knows what she whispered before the blade went in. But the old women who survived said she kept repeating one phrase in Walloon French: "Que la forêt se souvienne." Let the forest remember. When the soldiers left, they thought they'd buried her with the others. But the earth never kept her. Days later, German troops stationed nearby began to vanish. First patrols. Then entire squads. No gunfire. No blood. Just silence. And on every site, the same mark carved into bark or stone. When the Allies advanced through the region weeks later, they found no bodies, only reports of men missing in fog. The locals stopped entering the woods altogether. They said the trees had learned her name. Years later, Adam Carter read about that village by accident. A classified report buried in a locker labeled "Incident Belgium, Civilian Casualties." The name Nain appeared once, just once, followed by a single word: unaccounted. Maybe that's why the forest had chosen him. Maybe the silence that haunted him wasn't punishment, it was recognition. Because when the Germans came through that village, Adam's unit had been nearby. They'd heard rumors of what was happening, but command told them to stand down. "Not our sector," they said. "Not our problem." And Adam obeyed. He obeyed while a girl's voice was being swallowed by fire. That's what Otto meant when he said, "You are the reason they come." It wasn't about skin or side, it was about guilt. The kind that doesn't leave your blood. So when Adam saw her face again, in his dreams, in the reflection of his rifle barrel, in the movement of fog that looked like a dress, he knew. Nain wasn't haunting him. She was reminding him. The forest didn't kill for revenge. It collected what the world tried to forget. And Adam Carter, silent, obedient Adam, was the vessel it had chosen to remember through. When Adam Carter returned from the forest, he looked like a man who had crawled out of his own grave. His uniform was torn, his boots soaked through, his eyes fixed somewhere no one else could see. He didn't speak. Not during debriefing. Not to the medics who patched him up. Not even to the chaplain who knelt beside his bed and whispered, "Son, you're safe now." Because Adam knew better. There was no safe anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone the forest remembered. Command wrote the incident off as fog confusion, hostile encounter, psychological trauma, environmental disorientation. In simpler words, he cracked. But the men in his unit, the ones who knew him before that mission, didn't believe it. They said he wasn't broken, he was different. Too calm. Too aware. In the nights that followed, he started waking up screaming without sound. Nurses said his eyes stayed open the whole time. One swore that, just before he stopped shaking, he whispered something under his breath. 5 names. When she tried to write them down, the paper went missing the next morning. By the second week, soldiers began to avoid him. They called him Silent Carter. Said he carried bad luck, that radios shorted when he walked into the room, that fires died down when he sat too close. At first, those were just camp rumors, the kind every army breeds when boredom meets fear. But then the disappearances started again. A young private from Louisiana vanished during night watch. His rifle and helmet were left behind, frost covering the spot where he'd stood. The next day, another soldier swore he saw a woman standing between the trees near camp, barefoot, covered in ash, her mouth sewn shut. He shot himself 2 nights later. By the end of that week, 5 men were gone. And every single one had spoken to Adam the night before. They moved him to another unit, far west, near Bastogne, hoping distance could break whatever followed him. But the silence followed too. Sometimes, when the fog rolled in from the north, men swore they heard footsteps outside their tents. Not running. Not marching. Just walking. Slow. Patient. And always, in the morning, someone would find a mark carved into the nearest tree, a circle, a slash, and beneath it, a word no one could translate. Adam stopped trying to explain. He just worked. Ate. Slept in short bursts. And waited. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew it wasn't over. The forest hadn't let him go, it had released him with purpose. One night, while clearing a German house, Adam found an old photograph tucked behind a broken mirror. A village. A young girl holding a basket of apples. And behind her, Otto. Not in uniform, just standing there, smiling faintly, his hands on a boy's shoulders. Adam froze. The photo trembled in his hand. That was the moment he realized something terrible. Otto hadn't just witnessed what happened to Nain. He'd caused it. The forest had given him 5 names to pay, but the debt wasn't finished. Because Otto was still alive. That night, Adam didn't sleep. He sat alone beside a dying fire, the photograph burning to ash in his hand, and whispered something into the dark. 5 was never enough. By the spring of 1945, the war was ending. The world was already writing its victory speeches. But Adam Carter wasn't interested in parades or peace treaties. He was listening to something older, quieter, and calling him by name. It began in his sleep. The dreams weren't dreams anymore, they were memories, and not all of them his own. He saw Nain standing in the fog, her face calm, her hands covered in blood that didn't belong to her. Behind her were shapes, tall, gray, faceless, the same figures that had circled the camp that night. Each time she appeared, she whispered the same word, unfinished. By the 10th night, Adam stopped fighting it. He packed his gear, cleaned his rifle, and walked out of the camp without a word. No orders. No explanation. No destination. Just the pull, steady, undeniable, leading him east, toward the Herkin Forest. Soldiers who saw him go said he didn't look like a deserter. He looked like a man following something that wouldn't let him go. The forest greeted him the same way it had before, with silence. Snow half melted, ground soft and breathing. Even the air smelled familiar. Iron, wet soil, and something that had been waiting a long time. As he walked, Adam noticed the forest had changed. The trees were thicker, almost fused together, bending inward as though closing around him. Every few steps, he'd see the symbol, not carved this time, but grown. Branches twisting themselves into circles with slashes through their centers. Roots snaking across the path like writing in a language the earth had learned to speak. The deeper he went, the warmer it became. The snow vanished. The soil steamed. And somewhere far ahead, a faint orange light flickered, not a fire, more like a heartbeat. Then he saw him. Otto. Sitting on a fallen log in the center of a clearing, just as calm as before. Older, beard grown, eyes too awake for a man who should have been long dead. You came, Otto said, voice quiet, almost relieved. Adam didn't lower his rifle. You were supposed to be dead. Otto nodded slowly. I was. Once. But the forest doesn't let the guilty rest. They stared at each other for a long moment, soldier and ghost, sinner and witness. I killed you, Adam said flatly. You killed one of me, Otto replied. The others stayed. The forest keeps its echoes. Adam's jaw tightened. Then it ends tonight. Otto rose, unafraid. That's why you're here. It was never revenge, Adam. It was inheritance. The fog trembled. The earth shifted under their boots. And from the trees, the figures emerged again, the same shapes that had haunted Adam's dreams. Not soldiers. Not spirits. Something in between. Nain stood among them, her eyes burning like embers. Otto dropped to his knees. I asked them to take me long ago, he said, voice breaking. They refused. Adam's hand tightened around his knife. Why? Otto looked up at him, tears freezing on his cheeks. Because you hadn't chosen yet. For the first time, Adam understood. The forest didn't want Otto's death. It wanted Adam's decision. He could either end the cycle or become part of it. He dropped his rifle into the snow, blade glinting in hand. Otto whispered, This isn't vengeance. Adam looked at him one last time. No, he said. its balance. He drew the blade across his palm, pressed the bleeding hand to Otto's chest, and the ground erupted in a single, thunderous silence. When it ended, Otto was gone. The figures were gone. And Adam Carter stood alone again, but the forest finally exhaled. For the first time, it was quiet. Not heavy. Not cruel. Just quiet. When Adam Carter walked out of the Herkin Forest the second time, he didn't look like a man who had survived. He looked like someone who had ended something. His uniform was torn, his face pale as ash, and his right hand wrapped in cloth still dark with blood that wouldn't wash off. The MPs who found him near the road to Bastogne said he didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't even blink when they pointed rifles at him. He just said one sentence, "It's paid." They thought he meant his rations. The report that followed was short, clinical, and deeply wrong. Subject recovered. No visible wounds. Mental instability suspected. They kept him in a field hospital for a week. He didn't sleep once. Doctors noted his pulse remained perfectly steady, even when they tried sedatives. Major Bill Trenholm from Army Intelligence flew in personally to question him. Trenholm had seen his share of oddities, deserters, shell shock, even men who claimed angels had guided them through minefields, but nothing like Carter. "Tell me what happened in there," Trenholm said, voice steady, tape recorder spinning between them. Adam stared at him for a long time, then said softly, "They remember what justice forgets." Then silence. Trenholm pressed. "Who does?" No answer. The tape ended with 35 minutes of empty hiss. Within a week, every record connected to that interrogation vanished. The film reels were logged as damaged. The typed transcript was replaced with a single redacted page stamped Operation Claywell, classified. Trenholm tried to reopen the case, but his superiors shut it down. "Focus on the living," they told him. "The war's over." But the war didn't feel over. Not to anyone who read that file. Because strange things began happening across Europe. Recon patrols disappearing in wooded areas. Villages reporting moving fog. Radio transmissions repeating words no one could translate. Each report crossed Trenholm's desk, and each time, buried within the paperwork, he found the same thing. A small circle with a single jagged slash. Drawn in red ink. He started connecting dots. Belgium. France. Korea. Vietnam. Different decades, same pattern. 5 missing soldiers. 1 survivor. Always the same mark. Trenholm called it the Carter pattern. His colleagues laughed. Until he stopped showing up for work. They found him weeks later in his apartment, hands covered in ink, walls covered in symbols. On his desk sat a napkin with 5 names written in blood. None matched the military database. The Pentagon labeled it a breakdown. But deep inside the intelligence archives, a subfolder appeared under Claywell, subsection C, Herkin. Access restricted to command level only. Inside it were fragments, aerial photos that never stayed still, topographic maps that shifted coordinates when copied, and a final note written by Colonel West, Trenholm's former commanding officer. "Do not enter coordinates 50 degrees 40 minutes north, 6 degrees 18 minutes east. The forest moves. It is not terrain. It is memory." By the early 1950s, the Army erased the incident entirely. No mention in reports, no medals, no grave. Adam Carter became a ghost on paper, discharged without ceremony, declared unfit for service, and listed as missing in transit. But every now and then, someone new stumbled across his name in the archives. And when they did, strange things started happening again. Files would go missing. Recordings would erase themselves overnight. And on the folders that remained, someone, or something, would always draw that same mark. Because you can bury a story. You can burn its paper, shred its evidence, deny its truth. But memory doesn't die that easily. The war ended, or so the world believed. Flags rose, parades marched, and men tried to forget what they'd seen. But not Adam Carter. Because the forest doesn't let go of those it remembers. After his discharge, no one could trace him. His file was sealed, his address redacted, his name erased from every payroll ledger. It was as if the Army had wiped him from existence. But legends have a way of surviving bureaucracies. Years later, whispers began to circulate among veterans. A lone soldier spotted walking through the woods outside Stuttgart, American uniform, eyes dark as winter. A man who never spoke, never aged, and always left 5 footprints before vanishing. In Korea, 1951, a patrol went missing during a night operation. One survivor returned, shaking, repeating the same words over and over, "He was waiting for us." When asked who, he said, "Carter." The same story appeared again in Vietnam, then Iraq, then Afghanistan. Different forests. Same silence. Same mark carved into the trees, a circle, a slash, and below it, one word, paid. Some said he was a ghost, a soldier who died in 1945 and refused burial. Others swore he was still alive, moving from war to war, following the trail of those who'd forgotten their debts. In 1977, a Belgian photojournalist claimed to have met him. He was living alone in a cabin near the edge of Herkin Forest. No power, no phone, no past. When asked his name, he simply said, "I keep what others forget." The journalist tried to take a picture. The camera jammed. When he returned the next day, the cabin was gone, only a small wooden carving left in the dirt. 5 names. One word beneath them, paid. Decades passed. The world changed. Wars shifted continents. But the legend of Adam Carter never faded, it just adapted. On military forums, old veterans told stories about the black soldier in the fog. Young recruits joked about the ghost collector. And every once in a while, a real soldier would go quiet, eyes distant, and whisper, "He's real." Some say Carter was cursed. Others believe he was chosen. But those who've seen him, or think they have, tell the same story. He doesn't speak. He doesn't shoot. He just looks at you, as if measuring something invisible. And if he nods, you don't come back. In 2003, a classified Black Ops unit disappeared in an Afghan valley. The only survivor was found barefoot, walking down a desert highway, dazed but unharmed. When questioned, he said only one thing: 5 for her. Still unpaid. They marked him as delusional. But the report's coordinates, when cross-checked, led to an area where no satellite image stays stable, as if something in the terrain moves. Those who know the old stories call it the new Herkin. And somewhere deep inside a bunker in Virginia, behind locked doors and redacted files, there's a monitor that flickers every 17 hours. Each time it glitches, a shape appears in the frame, a man standing alone beneath the trees. No heat signature. No heartbeat. Just stillness. Watching. The technicians say it's an error. But one of them, an old soldier who served in Iraq, swears otherwise. He says that before the feed cuts out, you can see the faint outline of a mark on the nearest tree. A circle. A slash. And if you listen closely, through the static, you can almost hear a whisper. The forest remembers. Because maybe Adam Carter never died. Maybe he wasn't a curse or a ghost at all. Maybe he was something the war itself created, a keeper of balance, a memory that refuses to fade. And if you ever find yourself deep in a forest where the wind suddenly stops and the silence feels too heavy, don't run. Don't speak. Just ask one question. Is it paid?